Hi everyone, welcome to the world of English with Sakshi Khanna once again in the continual session of the chapter Enemy Book Vista Grade 12. So today we are finishing the chapter as only 4 to 5 pages are left with line to line explanation. And before I start, I just brief you up that story revolves around Dr. Sadao, a Japanese surgeon, and his family. One fine day, Dr. Sadao and his wife Hannah saw a man washed by the waves, and they immediately go near him to treat him. When they turned him, they realized that he is a white man, an American prisoner of war. So, operation was done successfully. Patient was suggested to move the body according to the labor as suggested by the Dr. Sadao. Now the time has come to explain the thing to the general office because they were feeling little scary. The couple was feeling little scary. Let's move and see what happens now. I thought they had come to arrest you, she said. Who said? Sadao's wife, because two messengers in official uniform came to their house, but they got scary because they had kept one American prisoner and they were treating him. So they got scared. He gazed down into her anxious eyes. I must get rid of this man for your sake, he said in distress. Now she was very angry as well, and she simply said that I just want to get rid of this man. Somehow I must get rid of him. Sadao goes to see the general. Of course, the general said weakly, I understand fully, but that is because I once took a degree in Princeton. So few Japanese have. I care nothing for the man. Excellency, Sadao said, but having operated on him with such success. Yes, yes, the general said. Now general was talking. It only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Indispensable means? It means not to be dispensed with. Essential means it was not so essential like that. So it only makes me feel you more indispensable to me. Evidently you can save anyone. You are so skilled. You say you think I can stand one more such attack as I have had today. Because he was just praising his skills, surgery skills. Not more than one, Sadao said. Then suddenly, I can allow nothing to happen to you. Then General committed that nothing will happen to you in the service he made to the surgeon, to the general. The general said with anxiety. His long pale Japanese face became expressionless, which meant that he was in deep thought. You cannot be arrested, the general said, looked into his eyes. Suppose you were condemned to say next day I had to have my operation. There are other surgeons, Excellency, Sadao said. None I trust, because he was going through some surgery by Sadao. So it was mandatory, you can say, or you can say some convention, and you can say that a skillful surgeon. He was spared to do this act of saving the life of a prisoner because he was not the general was not trusting any other surgeon except Sadao. So none I trust, the general replied. The best ones have been trained by Germans and would consider the operation successful even if I died. I do not care for their point of view. It seems a pity that we cannot better combine the German ruthlessness with the American sentimentality. Then you could turn your prisoner over to execution, and yet I could be sure you would not murder me while I was unconscious, because he was knowing that he will become unconscious during the surgery. So a surgeon can do anything. Surgeon can do anything, whatever he wants. So he was also having such sort of feeling. So he said that nothing will happen to you. The journal laughed. He had an unusual sense of humor. He was just laughed and cracked a joke in the sense, even though, as a Japanese, could you not combine these two foreign elements? He asked. Sadao smiled. I'm not quite sure, he said, but for your sake, I would be willing to try. Excellency. Excellency is the respect he was giving to him. As we talk to the Britishers, we always say, Your Highness, to the judge, supreme power, those who are having. We say, Your Highness. Sorry. The general shook his head. I had rather not be the test case, he said. He felt suddenly weak and overwhelmed with the cares of his life as an official in times such as these when repeated victory brought great responsibilities all over. So they were just talking here. I just mentioned here nothing so important to understand here. Just listen properly that they were just talking about the prisoner, about the other doctors as well, because next moment his surgery was to be done. So he was feeling little scary. He wanted to save the skillful surgeon as well. So he committed that nothing will happen to you, but we need to find out some way. So after the surgery, so first we need to go through the surgery as he was in utmost pain. Victory to the South Pacific. It's our responsibility. It is very unfortunate that this man should have washed up on your doorstep, he said irritably, even though he was unhappy what happened at Sadao's place. But he was helpless. Everyone was helpless. I feel it so myself, Sadao said gently. He said the same. It was really unfortunate thing which happened at my place. It would be best if he could be quietly killed. The general said, not by you, but by someone who doesn't know him. I have my own private assassins. Now they plan what to do with the soldier, American prisoner. So they decided that you can't do that. You can't do the killing. I have my own private assassins. They are kept for killing purposes or to punish the people, the culprit. Suppose I send two of them to your house tonight or better, any night. You need know nothing about it. It is now warm. What would be more natural than that you should leave the outer partition of the white man's room open to the garden while he sleeps? He simply said that you just stay unaware of this plan. You show such like that to your family that you don't know who are they and how the man is about to kill. Okay, so you just leave the white man's room door open while he's sleeping. Certainly it would be very natural, Sadao agreed. In fact, it is so left open every night. He said that every night it remains open. Good, the journal said, yawning. They are very capable assassins. They make no noise and they know the trick of inward bleeding. If you like, I can even have them remove the body. They decided both that it will be done. Fine, okay. And Sadao also gave the consent. He had to give the consent because General was saving him, in fact, in the way. So he said that in fact my skillful assassins will remove the body as well. Sadao considered that perhaps would be best, Excellency. He agreed, thinking of Hannah. He left the general's presence then and went home, thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. He would tell Hannah nothing. Quietly, just he kept everything in his mind. Since she would be timid at the idea of assassins in the house. Timid means little scary personality, okay, who gets frightened so fast. And yet certainly such persons were essential in an absolute state such as Japan was. How else could rulers deal with those who opposed them? He refused to allow anything but reason to be the atmosphere of his mind as he went into the room where the American was in bed. But as he opened the door, to his surprise, he found the young man out of the bed and preparing to go into the garden. As he went into the room to see the soldier, American prisoner, you can say his patient, he was not on his bed, he was ready to move to the garden outside. He refused to allow anything but reason to be the atmosphere. What is this? He exclaimed. Who gave you permission to leave your room? I'm not used to waiting for permission, Tom said gaily. Very very openly, very briskly. I feel pretty good again, but will the muscles on this side always feel stiff? Now he was talking that I'm pretty well from physically, if you ask, so I can move. So he just satisfied, pacified the doctor, but simply said, but about some muscles, side of the muscles of one side, he is feeling little stiff. Is it so? Sadao in quite surprised. He said, now I thought I had provided against that. He lifted the edge of the man's shirt and gazed, looked properly. He examined why he is feeling stiff muscles. He checked the scar. Massage may do it. He said if exercise doesn't, it won't bother me much. The young man said. Young man said this is very little for me to bear. It's okay. Some exercise or some massage suggested by doctor. But he said I'm okay with this as well because he's an army man. His young face was gaunt under the stubbly blonde beard. He was just looking very confused, perplexed, you can say. Say, doctor, I have got something I want to say to you. If I had not met a Jap like you, well, I would not be alive today. I know that. Then he was praising and showing his gratification to the doctor for saving him. Sadao bowed, but he could not speak. He bowed down, but he didn't speak anything. Sure, I know that, Tom went on warmly, his big thin hands gripping a chair were white at the knuckles. I guess if all the Japs were like you, there would not have been Japanese in the short form Japanese have been a war. There would not have been a war because he was praising a lot for saving and he was saying that if all the Japs are like you, there would be no war at all. Perhaps Rao said with difficulty. And now I think you had better go back to bed. And then he suggested him to go to bed. It's time to sleep off. He helped the boy back into bed and then bowed. Good night, he said. Sadao slept badly that night. He was not good in sleeping that night. He was so restless. Why he was so restless? Because he was knowing the plan of general of killing the patient, killing the prisoner. Time and time again he walked, thinking he heard the rustling of footsteps, the sound of a twig broken or a stone displaced in the garden, a noise such as men might make who carried a burden. He was just hearing some noises in the garden because he was so concerned about his patient and they planned to kill him. The next morning, he made the excuse to go first into the guest room. If the American were gone, he then could simply tell Hannah that so the journal had directed. Okay, so he decided that maybe it's better to go to the room first, okay, to the guest room first, in spite of sending Hannah, because he wanted to check as journal had directed the person has been assassinated or not. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there on the pillow was the shaggy blonde head. He could hear the peaceful breathing of sleep and he closed the door again quietly. He is asleep, he told Hannah. He is almost well to sleep like that. What shall we do with him? Hannah whispered her old refrain. Sadao shook his head. I must decide in a day or two, he promised. But suddenly he thought the second night must be the night. First night missed by the assassins. They didn't reach. Second night they were expected to be there. There rose a wind that night and he listened to the sound of bending bows and whistling partitions. Hannah woke too. Ought we not to go and close the sick man's partition? She asked. No, Sadao said. And when you remain your door open and the wind blowing very fastly and it creates some noise, some disturbance, okay, so slamming the door was happening in the room, and Hannah said that we should close the door. Sadao stopped her because he was knowing, as he was suggested by the general, to keep the door open. He is able now to do it for himself. But the next morning the American was still there. Nothing happened second night as well. Then the third night, of course, must be the night, he decided. The wind changed to quiet rain, and the garden was full of the sound of dripping eaves and running springs. Sadao slept a little better, but he woke at the sound of a crash and leaped to his feet. Some crashing noise he heard and got up. What was that? Hannah cried. The baby woke at her voice and began to wail. I must go and see. Some noise they both heard from the children's room. But he held her and would not let her move. Sadao stopped Hannah. Sadao said. She cried, What is the matter with you? Don't go, he muttered. Don't go. His terror infected her, and she stood breathless. When he said like this, don't go, again and again, then she got little scary. She got frightened badly. His terror infected her because doctor was also feeling scary. He was so fearful that time. Together they crept back into the bed, the baby between them. There was only silence. Yet when he opened the door of the guest room in the morning, there was a young man. He was very gay and had already washed and was now on his feet. Everything he has done ready, freshly he was just looking. He had asked for a razor yesterday and he had shaved himself, and today there was a faint color in his cheeks. I'm well, he said joyously. Very happily he was just saying this. Sadao drew his kimono round his weary body. He could not, he decided suddenly, go through another night. It was not that he cared for his young man's life. No, simply it was not worth the strain. You are well, Sadao agreed. He lowered his voice. You are so well that I think if I put my boat on the shore tonight with food and extra clothing in it, you might be able to row to the rowing the boat means to move the boat to row to that little island not far from the coast. It is so near the coast that it has not been worth fortifying. Nobody lives on it because in storm it is submerged. But this is not the season of storm, so you could live there until you saw a Korean fishing boat pass by. They pass quite near the island because the water is many fathoms deep here. The young man stared at him slowly, comprehending. He was understanding what he wanted to say. He was making the plan to save the prisoner and send him back. I think so, Sadao said gently. You is not hidden that you are here. You should not be here where you are staying. So I just want to send you to your place. You just go away. I just want to get rid. Because the assassin didn't reach. Killing was not made. But the prisoner was there and fear was there of the American prisoner. So they wanted to get rid from the both. So he decided the way he is sending the prisoner back means out of this house. The young man nodded in perfect comprehension. Okay, he said simply. He got agreed. Sadao didn't see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore, and in it he put food and bottled water that he had bought secretly during the day, as well as 2 quilts he had bought as a pawn shop. The boat he tied to a post in the water, for the tide was high. There was no moon, and he worked without a flashlight. See his patience. See his patience of saving the person. Now the plan, how smartly he planned for saving the person afterwards as well. And he didn't make any mistake. He explained everything to the general as well. Okay, so he made his attempt both the way. As a doctor, successfully as a citizen as well. When he came to the house, he entered as though he were just back from his work. And so Hannah knew nothing. Hannah was unaware of this plan too. Yumi was here today, she said as he served his supper the night meal. Though she was so modern, still she didn't eat with him. Yumi cried over the baby. She went on with a sigh. She misses him so. Yumi came to meet the child because she was so close. So that night, Yumi was also there. The servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone, Sadao said. He went into the guest room that night before he went to bed himself and checked carefully the American's temperature, the state of the wound, and his heart and pulse. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because of excitement. He was so excited as he was moving. The young man's pale lips were pressed together and his eyes burned. Only the scars on his neck were red. I realize you are saving my life again, he told Sadao. Second time he saved his life. Not at all, Sadao said. It is only inconvenient to have you here any longer. Inconvenient because he's an American prisoner. He gave the information to the general officials, but nothing happened. They haven't done anything. Now he made plan 2 and he decided to get rid from the American prisoner so that there would be no trouble in the family by the officials, government officials of Japan. Sadao said, it is only inconvenient to have you. I can't keep you so longer. He had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight, but he had decided to give it to him after all. It was a small one, his own, which he used at night when he was cold. If your food runs out, means if your food getting short before you catch a boat, Korean boat, he said, signal me 2 flashes. At the same instant, the sun drops over the horizon. Do not signal in darkness, for it will be seen if you are all right but still there. Signal me once. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw. A fire would be seen. A fire would be seen. Okay, the young man breathed. So fire would be seen, he suggested, he guided, giving all the information of food, how to eat the food, raw food if you are running out of the food. So these all things were guided properly. If it is a question by the CBSE or in other unit tests or whatever the sense, that how he prepared the man to go safely from his home. So these all things will be kept in mind to give the answer. He was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Sadao had given him, and at the last moment Sadao wrapped a black cloth about his blonde head. Fully prepared, fully dressed, well dressed, safely dressed. You can say safely dressed. Now Sadao said. The young American, without a word, shook Sadao's hand warmly and then walked quite well across the floor and down the step into the darkness of the garden. Once, twice, Sadao saw his light flash to find his way, but that would not be suspected. He waited until from the shore there was one more flash. Then he closed the partition. He closed the door. That night he slept nicely. You say the man escaped? The general asked faintly. He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which Sadao had been called in the night. For 12 hours, Sadao had not been sure the general would live. The gallbladder was much involved. There was surgery about some gallbladder. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins. So far as he knew, they had never come. So when he went to check the patient, the general now, then he didn't ask about the assassins as he must be forgotten. The servants had returned and Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and had burned sulfur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. See the preparation by Yumi because she didn't like that person. Nobody said anything, only the gardener was cross because he had got behind with his chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums was the main reason because he was a gardener and he had got behind with his chrysanthemum. So he was against the person. But after a week, Sadao felt the general was well enough to be spoken to about the prisoner. That time general was not well when he went for the first follow-up. Second follow-up, the general was in the state to talk. Yes, Excellency, he escaped, Sadao now said. He coughed, signifying that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. But the old man opened his eyes suddenly. That prisoner, he said with some energy, did I not promise you I would kill him for you? Now he was recapping, refreshing his memory that what was decided. So it shows completely that he must have forgotten all the plan. You did, Excellency, Sadao said. Well, the old man said in a tone of amazement. So surprised he was. So I did, but you see, I was suffering a good deal. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forgot my promise to you. Then he was talking that I forgot my promise in my pain. I wondered, Your Excellency, Sadao murmured. It was certainly very careless of me, the journal said. Now he was blaming himself. But you understand it was not lack of patriotism or derelictions of duty. He looked anxiously at his doctor. If the matter should come out, you would understand that. Would not you? Certainly, Your Excellency. Now he was proving that it doesn't mean if I forgot that I am not a patriotic person. Certainly, Your Excellency, Sadao said. He suddenly comprehended that the journal was in the palm of his hand and that as a consequence he himself was perfectly safe. I can swear to your loyalty, Excellency, he said to the old journal, and to your zeal against the enemy. Then he was praising. Dr. Sadao was just praising the general. You are a good man, the journal murmured and closed his eyes. You will be rewarded. But Sadao, searching the spot of black in the twilighted sea, that night had his reward. There was no prick of light in the dusk. Dusk means the evening time. No one was on the island. His prisoner was gone. Safe, doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. He stood for a moment. Now he was just talking about that prisoner as he guided to make the flashlight. He stood for a moment on the veranda, gazing out to the sea from whence the young man had come that other night. At into his mind, although without reason, there came other white faces he had known. The professor at whose house he had met Hannah, a dull man, and his wife had been a silly talkative woman. In spite of her wish to be kind, he remembered his old teacher of anatomy, who had been so insistent on mercy with the knife, and then he remembered the face of his fat and slatternly landlady. Now he was reminding the time where he was living in America during his study. He had great difficulty in finding a place to live in America because he was a Japanese. The Americans were full of prejudice and it had been bitter to live in it. Prejudice means partial decision. Our own special mindset. Knowing himself their superior. They are thinking that they are superior. How he had despised the ignorant and dirty old woman who had at last consented to house him in her miserable home. He had once tried to be grateful because she had in his last year nursed her influenza, but it was difficult, for she was no less repulsive to him in her kindness. Now he remembered the youthful, haggard face of his prisoner, white and repulsive. Strange, he thought. I wonder why I could not kill him. Now he was just talking to himself. All the incidents, all the feelings which he had in America while staying during his education, as he was not liked by the Americans, as Americans think they are superior. So here we finish the chapter reading with insight. These are some questions. So these type of text based questions you will read and you will find out yourself. First I will do for you, very important, these are the bases. You will get questions, twisted questions, but with the simple answer. Let's read with me the first question. There are moments in life when we have to make hard choices between our roles as private individuals and as citizens with a sense of national loyalty. Discuss with reference to the story you have just read. So simple to explain. Both the personalities, as a Japanese citizen, as a professional surgeon. So both the personality you need to explain. Okay, and first you will start. There are moments in life we have to make hard choices. Yes, you will start with this context only. So such type of question, twisted language, but answers are very simple. Before I sign you off, I just explain you once again about this story which we finished just today by Paul S. Buck has given a suitable title to the story, that is Enemy. The title is quite appropriate and logical. The wounded American prisoner of war is a natural enemy of Dr. Sadao and his wife Hannah. They should have handed him over to the police, but human consideration outweighed all other consideration. That is why his duty as a doctor made Dr. Sadao to save the life of even a dying enemy well. So humanity overruled his patriotic emotions. So I just want to close this session by saying this. Humanism is the only religion. We should follow first the religion. And that is why he saved. How he saved? We all are patriotic people. We need to save the people. First, whatever the profession, whatever the individual we are, individually, he was a doctor. He was a doctor. So everything beyond the humanity overruled patriotic emotions, other emotions, some personal emotions. It says like this. So this story tells us that humanism is the biggest religion and utmost duty of everyone in the world. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay protected, and please pen down the notes. I request you. Okay? Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.